Yo, what's up, guys? Figured I would do a little late night stream, hopefully hit some bets. So last night on the live stream, we had this play, five picks on prize picks. This play cashed. So hopefully we're able to, hit another today. I know I had a live stream earlier and mainly going to be looking at esports. So the MLB is back, but esports, there's a lot more games. This was recently added to Odds Jam. So you'll see, if you go to esports, the reason betting on esports is great, so let me get rid of that, is there's just tons of different games, right? There's so many games in CSGO, in Valorant, in League of Legends, which means sportsbooks have tons of lines, and these sportsbooks have to keep their lines in check, right? And they're not perfect. So you're going to see tons of different things you can bet on prize picks. Underdog fantasy, sometimes their model gets out of sync with prize picks or parlay play. So hopefully we can find some good plays. I also have this new sports book I signed up for. It's called Hot Streak. Pulled up, and what's nice about Hot Streak is I'll just reload this, is every single hour they run odds boosts. They run promos, and it's a different promo, every single hour. So for example, you can see currently the top play, or I think this is the top play, but is Travis, Janowski. So it's always kind of a random player, and you're going to see they're improving the odds on his over half of an RBI. They're running an odds boost. So you can see that right here. And according to them, this plays 9% positive EV. So you can see Odds Jam picked it up. You're getting plus 344 odds on Hot Streak. What I don't really understand about this sports book is you'll notice like they put everything. So let's go back here to Travis. So they put everything in decimal odds. So you can see it says this is a 4.44. That's the price. That's the odds on the over. So if you're new to sports betting, you may be like, what does that mean? But essentially, they're just using decimal odds, which is kind of like sports books. They have different odds formats in Europe and all these different countries. So all 4.44 means is 344 American odds. So they're giving you this play at plus 344. And looking at the other sports books, it's pretty clear that that's really good value, right? Travis Jankowski, his RBI line is boosted. Like they're literally telling you this is a promo. It's boosted to plus 344 on Hot Streak. FanDuel is 144 cents worse at plus 200. DraftKings plus 290. Caesars plus 255. MGM plus 280. So clearly a really big price discrepancy. And they typically run a few different odds boosts every hour. So if you pull up, Mark Kanya, they're running a promo on him as well. And these boosts change every single hour. So right now it's 8 p.m., 8:08 p.m. So typically they'll run like three odds boosts an hour. And then the second it's 9 p.m., there will be four new players who are getting boosted, right? So you kind of have some different options to go with. Here's another play, right? You can see Dylan Moore. He's plus 135 odds on Hot Streak to go over half of a hit. On the other sports books, he's around plus 100. So clearly getting really good improvement. And again, the whole purpose of Odds Jam is like, you're taking your gut out of sports betting. You're really just looking for value in the market. And the reasoning for that is, again, like a lot of people, they think the way to make money sports betting is to, create a model that can beat every single sports book, right? And that's a great idea, but like you got to remember these sports books, FanDuel, DraftKings, Caesars, MGM, these are billion-dollar companies. Their models, their data feeds, the amount of resources they have, the amount of full-time employees they have watching their lines, like you're not just going to be able to create some little model at home to beat all the sports books. It's not really how it works. Just like trying to create your own little model to like beat the hedge funds and tell you which stock is going to go up or down tomorrow. It's just not going to work. The way you beat the books is you find like inefficiencies in the market, right? You essentially know FanDuel is a really sophisticated sports book. They've invested a lot of money in their ability to set lines, tons of resources. They're pricing Travis, Jankowski. They're telling you, yo, this should be priced at plus 200. DraftKings is another sports book. They have a different model. They're giving you juicier odds than FanDuel, right? So according to DraftKings, they think this guy's less likely to get an RBI because they're giving you better odds. But essentially, you just like kind of look at all the data points in the market. Every sports book is a data point, and you try to find really big discrepancies. You try to find the spots where sports books are screwing up, because if you look at, Underdog Fantasy, for example, they have thousands of different esports lines out right now. Prize Picks has thousands of different esports lines out right now. It's really hard to just like look at these lines. Well, it's impossible. If you just like watch esports, or if you try to create your own model, like that's not going to tell you if this guy's going to go over or under. The way you're going to beat these books is by finding like big discrepancies, like when is Prize Pick screwing up really big versus Underdog Fantasy. So what we can do is we can just create a slip on Hot Streak. So we might as well take the top profit margin play, which is this Travis play. So what's annoying about these odds boosts, are not annoying because they run 24 promos essentially every single day. Every single hour they have different odds boosts available, but you can only bet $10 on them every hour. So typically what I do is I just like go to the fantasy optimizer. Again, I keep it pretty simple. I'm always just following the data. I never am just like, yo, I think this guy's going over. I think this guy's going under. And I try to find two plays I can pair together. And the reason you need two plays is you can't just place one bet on Hot Streak. Like you're going to see if I pull up this odds boost, it's going to say you need at least two players from two different teams. So that's just the way this sports book works, is you got to include at least two picks in your entry. Like you have to create a parlay to bet on this sports book. So what I'm going to do is just pull up Brian Bello. Now I have two picks, right? The first play is positive EV, really good value at plus 344 on Hot Streak. Then we have Brian Bello, right? We're getting him at plus 153. Other sports books have him around plus 130. Finding value, finding discrepancies in the market. I could watch every single baseball game, right, that Brian Bello has pitched. I could create my own model. The best way, to money sports betting, to find discrepancies, find plays with an edge, is identifying, inefficiencies. Because FanDuel, DraftKings, and Caesars are three really big companies that have really sophisticated models, tons of employees watching their lines, and they're telling us this line should be around plus 130. Hot Streak's giving it to us at plus 153. So basically, every hour that I remember, I'm not up every hour of the day, but I just create a little two-pick entry on Hot Streak, and, kind of good to go. So here are the two picks I went with for this Hot Streak promo. And then what we can do is we can switch over to esports, which is, again, a new thing we added to OddsJam. So we have Underdog Fantasy, Prize Picks, and Parlay Play pulled up. So these are really the three only sports. There's only like three sports books that post esports lines. So you can see it's Parlay Play, Underdog, and Prize Picks. If you think about the MLB, so if we go over to the positive EV tool, so it looks like there's some plays on Fliff that look decent. So might as well pull up Fliff as well. So some people will be like, oh, I don't use these sports books, whatever. I'm not sure if, this stream is useful for me. And I totally get it. But I'm just using the sports books, obviously, that are available in my location. So, for example, depending on where you're located, I'm currently in California. There's different sports books. Like FanDuel is a great sports book. I bet with it all the time when I'm home in Virginia, but it's not legal in California. It's not legal in Florida. Whereas Prize Picks is legal in Florida. So depending on the state you're in, there are going to be different books that are legal. So what I'll do is, so what's nice about the MLB, as opposed to esports, is there's a lot more sports books posting lines. So here, what I'm going to be betting on Fliff is White Sox Braves. I'm going to take the Yurfie. So yes, run first inning, over half of a run in the first inning. So all these sports books, really complex models. They've invested millions of dollars into their models. They're all spitting out how favored do we think this over should be, right? All these sports books, they all want to be unique. So we have different lines for PointsBet because, PointsBet, I guess, they have different odds slightly from state to state. So you're going to see all these books are spitting out lines. PointsBet is like, we think this should be priced at minus 145. Pinnacle, which is known to be one of the smarter sports books, one of the sharper sports books, they're pricing this at minus 145. So by sharp, I just mean like there's a lot of volume on the sports book. So for example, let's just pull up. Yo, what's up, guys? What's up, guys? So sportsbooks tend to drop lines at kind of random times. CS:GO seems to drop at like 2 p.m. Eastern. League of Legends, oftentimes like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. for the upcoming day. But when you think about like, smarter markets and stuff like that, like if a sports book, they don't have a lot of betting volume, their lines won't, be as sharp or efficient. So if you think about Pinnacle, which is a sports book legal in tons of different countries, they allow pretty big bet sizes. It's known to be a pretty efficient betting market, which means they get a lot of betting volume. They move around lines due to supply and demand. And essentially, like you can see here, they're pricing this over at minus 145. And some people will be like, well, they could be wrong. And it's like, true. But if they were wrong, people already would have bet it down. Like, let's say people were like, no, minus 145 is wrong. This should be minus 180, right? This is a market. What people will do is they'll hit the over, and then Pinnacle will eventually move their line to minus 155 to minus 165. Like, sportsbooks move around their lines due to betting volume. So some people will be like, how do you know sportsbook odds are smart? And it's like, well, sportsbook odds reflect what everyone else thinks. Because if every sharp bettor was like, no, this under should be more favored, and they started hammering the under, all they're going to do is drop lines on the, under, or the NRFI, the no runs first inning. This will go from plus 123 to plus 113. It's just kind of like the price of a stock. It's like, this is currently the price of Facebook stock where it closed in the market today. How do you know it's the fair price or the true price? Well, again, there's millions of mutual funds, hedge funds, smart people with their own models every single day. These day traders, they wake up, they think about the price of Facebook. Is it too high, too low? Should I buy or sell? Is the company overvalued, undervalued? And this is just where supply and demand is equal. So the market expresses, the opinions of everyone in the world. And it's the same thing for sports betting, right? These lines are a function of what all sports bettors are betting, right? The sports books have models that kind of post initial odds, and then you'll see sports books move around lines due to supply and demand. So it doesn't look like lines have been moving a lot now. It looks like books just released, first inning total runs lines. But like if everyone comes in and they're like, no, this over should be a lot more favored. It should be like a 2-1 favorite, minus 200. Everyone's going to bet these overs. All the sharp bettors are going to hit these overs. And sportsbooks are going to move odds to minus 160, minus 170, whatever. But like, that's why lines move, right? Because people express opinions. That's why stock prices go up and down. New information comes out. Maybe some hedge funds like, oh, Facebook's overvalued, so they sell a lot of their stock. The price goes down to reflect that someone really smart in the market, is reducing their stake in Facebook. They want to sell it at the current market price. So that's why markets work, right? Because they express the beliefs of all people. Because if you don't believe minus 125 is the correct price, or if you don't believe it should be minus 140, you can bet this. And then the line will end up moving if enough people have the same belief as you. So long story short, to talk a lot, but we're getting really good value at minus 125, right? Fliff is giving us this line at minus 125. We have literally dozens of other data points. Sure, some of these sports books, obviously, Betway, they have slightly different odds from state to state. You can see sometimes. But in general, we have tons of different data points, right, telling us where this line should be set. And we're just looking for value. We're looking for discrepancies in the market. So this can be the first play we lock in on Fliff. White Sox Braves over half of a first inning total run. So what you want to do is you want to go to innings, and sometimes these lines move pretty quickly. So I'll try to move quick, but this will be the first bet I hit on this live stream just to play with an edge, right? You can see all the other sports books pricing this around minus 135, some of the bigger, more efficient betting markets, right? The sports books that get more volume in general, you want to put a little more weight into their odds, right? If there's a lot of betting volume, the sportsbook odds are going to be more efficient, right? If DraftKings has millions of dollars bet on this game, their lines are going to be pretty dialed in, because if all the sharps come in and hammer lines, they're going to have pretty accurate pricing. So you can think about it like some of the biggest sports books, DraftKings, Caesars. DraftKings has this at minus 145. We're getting this at minus 125 on Fliff. FanDuel has this at minus 154, getting it at minus 125 on Fliff. Pinnacle, known to be one of the sharpest bookmakers, they're at minus 145. Getting this at minus 125 on Fliff. So long story short, you kind of look at some of the biggest sports books in the world. They all have this minus 145 to minus 150. It's like, yeah, getting minus 125 on Fliff is pretty clearly a great bet. So we're locking it in. Nothing super complicated. But anyways, I'll go back here to the fantasy optimizer and let's look at some esports plays. So I've explained before, but not a lot of books, post esports lines. So there are some different strategies you can implement. But one strategy that is pretty effective is called middle betting. And I've explained it in other videos, but essentially, what you can do and what a lot of people do, if you look up middle betting, you'll see there's a lot of channels that will talk about middle betting, stuff like that. But it's a pretty simple concept is when sports books are setting their lines at really different levels, there's a really big discrepancy in the market. What you can do is you can bet the over on one sports book, the under on the other sports book with their line way different. In 3 versus 4, like a lot of people may look at this and be like, oh, that's only 1 point though, 3 versus 4. What's really the difference? But if you think about it on a percentage basis, that's like a 33% increase, right? Like imagine if an NBA player's rebound line was 3 versus 4. It's the same thing here, right? It's a different sport, but it's the same concept. 3 versus 4 is a big difference. It's the same as 30 versus 40, right? Like imagine an NFL game was the total was set at 30 on DraftKings and 40 on FanDuel. You'd be like, that's a massive discrepancy. Same thing here on a percentage basis. So it's still a really big middle, right? So essentially what you're doing when you're middle betting is you're just capitalizing on these inefficiencies in the market. So you take the over on the sports book with their line significantly lower, and then you take the under on the sports book with their line significantly higher. And what's great about middle betting is, right, we're always going to win one of these bets. So we're really hedged, right? We're not taking an opinion on, like, this isn't about esports. Some people would be like, oh, man, I don't know anything about League of Legends. And it's like, you don't have to know anything about League of Legends. This is just, you're finding inefficiencies in the odds. You found a 33% discrepancy between the sports books that you're capitalizing on, right? The way books make money is they charge a little vig, right? They charge the spread. But at the end of the day, like when you have these really big middles, all you're doing is saying, hey, if this guy, I'm pretty sure his name is Fuck One, but I'm not exactly sure. But if he has exactly 3 kills, right, which is like what his line is centered around. It's like if an NBA player's line were 3 and he had exactly 3 rebounds. It's going to happen like, 20, 25% of the time. So if he has exactly 3 kills, this play will push. So on parlay play, we're going to get a refund, right? The bet is going to push if he has exactly 3. On underdog, we win. If he has exactly 4, on underdog, we'll push. And on parlay play, we'll win. So that's the great thing about middle betting is you're always going to win at least one of the plays. And it's really effective for esports. And the reason it's good for esports is, first of all, there's just so many different games, right? And these sports books, I mean, literally, they're pretty good at setting their lines. They all have their complex models, spitting out these lines, moving around lines due to supply and demand. But sometimes they get way out of sync with each other, right? Like they can't keep everything in check. Underdog Fantasy doesn't have that many employees. It's almost midnight Eastern time, right? Like it's not like there's that many people watching their lines and they have to keep everything in check, just like Prize Picks, just like Parlay Play do. And sometimes they slip up. So you can see there's some different middles available. So where do we want to start? We can see what looks like the best middle play out there. So you can see there's some on, Underdog Fantasy as well, between Prize Picks and Underdog Fantasy. So we could create one between Prize Picks and Underdog Fantasy. And if you look at some of these, it seems like Underdog Fantasy, like we're always talking about using data to make better bets, using market information. So you can see, like for this parlay play guy, they're spitting out Richard's line at 4.5. Underdog Fantasy is at 5.5. And then if we go to Prize Picks, so let's go to League of Legends. If we go to Prize Picks, they have his line at 4.5, right? So parlay play and Prize Picks, there's only like 3 sports books in general that are, or at least right now, there's only 3 sports books posting League of Legends player props. It's not like a really big betting market, so there aren't a lot of sports books that post lines. But you can see here, it's like, okay, we have 3 sports books. 2 of them have the line at 4.5. Underdog Fantasy's at 5.5. So it seems like Underdog Fantasy is the side that's, wrong or off from the rest of the market. but we can also just middle it. So if you only were going to pick one side, it's like you'd probably rather take the under on underdog just because, like, again, prize picks and parlay play, they both have the line at 4.5. So it seems like underdog fantasy is the one that's kind of slipping up. Their models out of sync with the other sports books and what their models are spitting out. So if anything, you could just take the under on underdog fantasy, or you could middle it, right? So what we can do is we can start to create this middle between underdog fantasy, and then we can see if we prefer placing this middle on prize picks or on parlay play. So then we have Nesty. So his line is 4.5, it looks like, on prize picks. And one thing to mention for esports is when you're playing, is this League of Legends? So let me reload this because I don't see this play available on prize picks. Nesty. So we can go here and we can try to find this play. Oh, it's spelled wrong. So we have Nesty. His line is 4.5 on prize picks on underdog fantasy. If we go here, Nesty. His line's 5.5, but you can see they just locked it. So I've explained this before too, but like a lot of these really good, middle bets and stuff like that, you got to be quick to get on them. So let me reload this. So you can see this play, they just removed it. So this is what I mean. Like, you're kind of at war with the sports books. You're trying to find where they're slipping up before they do. And you can see underdog fantasy is the only one that removed it. Prize picks didn't remove it. So underdog fantasy, it seems like, is the one more screwing up on esports. But if I go here, for example, like, we can just see. So a play we hit earlier was the Sunny guy. On underdog fantasy, I took his under 43.5. And then if I go back here, we can see I took him over 38 on prize picks. So that's a 5.5 point middle, right? Prize picks is at 38. Underdog fantasy at 43.5. But again, I hit that bet when lines first came out. You can see underdog fantasy is now at 39, right? Like, you'll typically notice these really good big line discrepancies, the most profitable betting opportunities. Like, underdog fantasy literally dropped this guy's line like 10%, right? It was 43.5. A couple hours later, it's 39 because they realized, hey, we're screwing up. Our line's way off from other sports books. We're way off from the rest of the market. So I'll reload this now that this play's gone. And we can get back to hitting some middles. So then we have way over 4 and under 5. So let's go here. So we have way under 5, and then we want this. So we want his over 4, and then we want, so it seems like underdog fantasy in general has their line a lot higher than these other sports books have it. So we have this guy, we want to take his under, the over here, and then we have Richard 1. So many different names in esports. So let's pull up this Richard player. Perfect. So we want to take his under on underdog fantasy, and then we want to take his over on parlay play. So we already have 3 really good picks, and you can see some of these lines that I'm getting on parlay play. Most of them are available on prize picks. So it really does seem like underdog fantasies, the one that's kind of slipping up here. Here's another one, Yoshino, 3 versus 4. So what we can do is we can just try to create a little entry. So Wales. So this, unfortunately, you'll notice on underdog fantasy, you're not able to take players from the same team. So you can see here, like, if I wanted to take this, Fook 1 guy as well as Yoshino, both to go under, they're on the same team, but they're not going to let me bet, 2 unders together. And the reasoning is players from the same team are kind of like, the word is positively correlated to go under. So if Yoshino goes under, then Fook 1 is more likely to go under. So like playing an under, 2 unders for players on the same team is like a really good thing if you could do it on underdog fantasy. And it's the same thing on parlay play. Like, you'll notice they're not going to let us play players from the same team. So they say that right here. But you can on prize picks, right? Which is why prize picks is a little easier to beat in esports. As you can see here, if I pull up, 2 players on the same team, So like this, and then let's say I take an under for a player on another team, like Prize Picks will let me bet this. So this would be, we have positive correlation here, right, between two players. So on Prize Picks, you can include up to 2 esports players from the same team, which is why it's a little bit of an added benefit to play your plays, to play esports plays on Prize Picks if you can find positive correlation. So we can keep on going and try to find some stuff. So next we have Sparta. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So we have Sparta, and we want to take him under 5 versus Team Flaw. And he's on, nope. So what I need to do is remove this Yoshino guy because I already have one from Team Flash. And then you can see I want to take his under. So these are all 4 different games, so we don't have that issue with correlation. And then in this case, right, we want to take his over on Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy at 4. Parlay play at 5. And you can see right here, you could also, well, you can't play this on Prize Picks. Prize Picks doesn't have this line available. Then you can see there's a 1.5 point gap for Artemis. He's 13 on Parlay Play, 11.5 on Underdog. Again, just like imagine if Anthony Davis's line was 11.5 rebounds on Underdog, 13 on Parlay Play. You'd be like, dang, that's a huge discrepancy. Same thing here in esports. So here's another one, Megumin. His line is 4 on Parlay Play in this case. It's 3 on Underdog. It's 3.5 on Prize Picks. So here it's a little less clear like who's wrong, right? Prize Picks is right in the middle. Underdog's at 3. Parlay Play's at 4. So most likely, if you check before game time, probably all these sports books will have their line at 3.5. All the inefficiencies, will have gone away in the market. So what we can do, and you can see here's a pretty big Valorant one, right? 30.5 on Parlay Play, 28 on Underdog Fantasy. So what we can do is just lock in this last play. So we want to go here and we want to take his. Nope, you can see they just moved it to 3.5. So again, you got to be quick to get in on some of these discrepancies, but whatever. We'll find another play pretty easily. There were a lot. So this Megumin play is going to be gone. And then what we can do is, how about this? We can add in a Valorant play, Batty G. What a name. We got Batty G. So here you can see his line is 28, right? And I want to take the under here, right? And this is good because 5-pick entries are, optimal on Prize Picks. On Underdog Fantasy and Parlay Play. So what I mean by that is like you got to be a little careful because you'll notice on like Prize Picks, if you create a 3-pick entry, they're only giving you a 5x payout, whereas on Underdog Fantasy, so I'll remember Sparta, whereas on Underdog Fantasy they're giving you a 6x payout. So on Underdog Fantasy, 3-pick entries are pretty good in terms of their payout structure if you like go through the math, whereas on Prize Picks they're horrible, right? 5x versus a 6x payout. It makes a really big difference long term. So here's the middle. I'm going to lock in if anyone wants to tail it. So we have 3 unders on Underdog Fantasy, capitalizing on big inefficiencies in the market. We have 2 overs, 3 unders. So 4 League of Legends picks and then 1 Valorant pick. And then I got the same thing on Parlay Play, just the other side of the middle. So my first 3 are overs, and then my next 2 are unders. So what we can do is just lock this in. Insured entries. So 5-pick or 6-pick insured is what you want to go with on Parlay Play. And then on Underdog Fantasy, again, these lines won't last forever as people start to bet them. So if you want to lock it in, right? Pretty big line discrepancies. 2.5 kill line discrepancy for Batty G. And then the rest of these are 1-point discrepancies. So we can go ahead and we can lock this in. And I'll do 5 picks with insurance. So Underdog Fantasy, like if you go through the math, and what I can do is actually just pull up a little spreadsheet, kind of breaking down the math behind Underdog. Yeah, I mean, I post most of my bets to Twitter, but obviously not when I'm, on a live stream. Then they're not getting posted to Twitter and stuff like that. But in general, most picks are posted to Twitter, at least for Prize Picks and the main sports books. So what we can do is we can lock this in 3 picks here. But what I was going to say is like, for some people, it's a little confusing. Like, why should I place a 5-pick entry versus a 2-pick entry? So basically on Underdog Fantasy, the way you can like kind of think about it, and I'll just go ahead and lock this in now. So Parlay Play only lets you their max bet size on this platform. They have a maximum stake of $100. So I'll just lock this in for $100 on Underdog. But what I was going to say is like, so on Underdog Fantasy, what you can do when I talk about on Underdog, you want to go a 3-pick, 4-pick with insurance, 5-pick with or without insurance. It can be a little confusing, but essentially, like, basically the way it works is if you can win these player props, right? Like, let's say your win rate. So Graham Ashcraft, whoever this pitcher is, over under 15.5 outs. That's where his line set. Like, let's say you can win these player props just like this over under 57% of the time, right? So if you can win your prop bets like Ashcraft over under 15.5, 57% of the time, your ROI playing 2-pick entries would be negative 2.53%. And I have some videos about this on the OddsJam YouTube if you want to, go through all the math and stuff like that. But, you're winning 57% of your over-unders. You're only losing 43% of your picks, and you're still getting crushed. You're losing money. Your ROI is negative 2.53%, so really bad. So that's not good. On the other hand, 5 picks with insurance, if you're winning 57% of your plays, your ROI is 17%, right? So essentially, all you need to know is 2 picks are horrible compared to 5-pick entries, assuming you can win your player props 57% of the time, right? So these over-unders, you can win these 57% of the time. Your ROI playing 5 picks with insurance would be 16.9%. Your ROI, and like literally nothing controversial here. This is just the math behind Underdog Fantasy, breaking down their payout structure and how much they pay out. Whereas for 2-pick entries, winning 57% of your picks, you're still not even profitable. So it really matters, which is why you'll never see me, posting a 2-pick, or people who are playing 2 picks in general, like they don't know what they're doing. So if there's someone who claims to be really profitable and they're playing 2-pick entries, like there's not a chance. Because they're literally playing the worst type of entry on Underdog Fantasy. It's about as big of a scam as you can get is the payout they have for these 2-pick entries. So we can go back here. We can see if there's any other plays available. So we can pull up Underdog Fantasy, look for some line discrepancies. Maybe there's some good things. Maybe there's not. But that's kind of just wanted. So here you can see another one, right? Like, on Underdog Fantasy, Addicted, his line is 25.5 on Underdog Fantasy. Prize Picks has his line 2.5 points higher, kills higher at 28. Parlay plays at 28.5. So you kind of have a couple different options. You could either middle this. It's a 3-point middle, right? LeBron's line were 25.5, 28.5 points. You'd middle it, right? Like, that's a big discrepancy. Really big discrepancy. Three kills. Or, it seems like Underdog Fantasy is the side that their line's too low. Like, they're below Prize Picks. They're below, Parlay Play. In a good way, if you want to see like, oh, which sports book do I think is wrong, is you'll typically notice as you get closer to game time, which sports book was wrong. So, for example, if you look at the Sunny guy, Underdog Fantasy has adjusted his line from 43.5, where I initially bet it. Now they're all the way down to 39. So Underdog Fantasy is literally like admitting they're wrong, right? They're like, yeah, like our line was way too high. We're bringing it down to 39. So in general, it seems like Underdog Fantasy is the side that's kind of slipping up, screwing up. So what I can do is maybe we just create a little entry on Prize Picks on Underdog Fantasy. And we don't middle it, but we just place a bet. Again, what stinks about betting on esports is, again, there's just not as many books posting lines. So if you think about MLB player props, right, there's like, tons of sports books. You can see right here, there's dozens of sports books that have MLB player prop lines. They're all telling you, right, that Carlos Rodon, his over 5.5 strikeout should be heavily favored, right? FanDuel, DraftKings, All these books have the over heavily, heavily favored, right? And again, like these are just the sports books I use, but there's 190 something like that sports books on OddsJam on the Positive EV tool. So if you use FanDuel, whatever, Bet365, like I'm just showing you obviously the things I'm betting on. So I've never heard of this sports book, but I'm sure some people use it. Power Play. They have the Brewers plus 1.5 run line at minus 200. Every other sports book has this at an average line of minus 250, right? So there's a crazy value. Every other book has the Brewers plus 1.5, a lot more favored. It's kind of like if there were hundreds of different stock exchanges and you wanted to be a day trader and you look on, at the price of the stock on all these different platforms, and Betfair is telling you it's worth 257. Bovada is telling you the stock is worth 250. FanDuel, who is a pretty big sports book, like they take a fair amount of bets, so a pretty efficient market. Their line's at minus 265, right? Pinnacle minus 235, and then it's like, okay, do you want to buy this stock at $200? And you'd probably be like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. All these other books have this, about $50 higher at 250. So not a super complicated, you can get into the nitty-gritty, which we have a lot of tutorial videos on YouTube about like how to back out the profit margin of your bet. What are no-vig odds, right? So this no-vig odds column, what does it mean? How do you derive it? Like, if you want to get, super complicated about sports betting, you can, but the general premise is pretty simple. It's just like, find value in the market. So what we can do is let me load up Fliff as well. Make sure I don't miss Fliff. Okay. And then we can go back to Underdog Fantasy and maybe create one last, maybe two last, we'll see, 3 pick entries just based on some of these line discrepancies. So I already used this Richard play, I believe, so we can reload this. So Underdog Fantasy lets you bet a maximum for esports of $250 per player per day. So I actually could bet Richard again. So what I could do is just be like, okay, I only bet $100. I still have $150. So you can see on esports players, right? It's if I include another pick, my max bet size is going to be $250. So they only let you bet $250 per player per day. So what I could do is take Richard's under, right? And in this case, I'm not going to middle it, right? His line is 5.5 on Underdog. Prize Picks has him lower. Parlay Play has him lower. Same with Way, right? So if we take a look at him, it's like, okay, Prize Picks has him lower. Parlay Play has him lower. So 2 data points versus 1. Again, it would be great if FanDuel, Pinnacle, all these other sports books also had League of Legends player props, and they all had this guy's line at 4, because then we'd be even more confident. We'd be like, wow, every sports book is telling us this line should be set at 4. It's really clear Underdog Fantasy screwing up. But in this case, we don't have that, right? Unfortunately, we only have a few different sports books. So what we'll do is we'll hit the under on Underdog Fantasy. The 2 other sports books are telling us this line should be at 4. And in general, it seems like Underdog Fantasy is the one that is slipping up. Like Underdog Fantasy, as you get closer to game time, seems to be the one that moves lines. So you can see here's a 3-pick entry that I'll go ahead and I'll lock in. So 3-pick entries you want to play with no insurance. And it's the same thing, kind of going through the math on Underdog Fantasy. So for a 3-pick with no insurance, if you win 57% of your plays, your ROI would be 11%, right? Whereas for a 3-pick with insurance, your ROI winning 57% of your over-unders. So if you can win these over-unders 57% of the time, your ROI is going to be negative 2.53%, right? So 3-pick no insurance, 11%. 3-pick with insurance, negative 2.53%. So you never want to include insurance on these 3-pick entries. So what I'll do is I'll go back here. And you can see if I try to lock it in for 250, they're going to say, hey, you've already, that would take you over your betting limit on Richard and Way. So I'm only going to be able to bet 150. And then I'll go ahead and I'll lock it in, right? And I can almost assure you, if you check this line at 10:30 a.m. on Friday, Underdog Fantasy will have moved it up because they're realizing they're wrong. So you're just capitalizing on sports books when their models get out of sync. They're asleep at the wheel. Everyone at Underdog Fantasy is currently asleep. So we're just capitalizing, on those inefficiencies. It does look like more lines are dropping right now in League of Legends. So Bruce, his line is 2.5 on underdog. Lakai, his line is 2. So you don't want to take 2 overs from players on the opposing teams, right? Because that's negatively correlated. Like the same way in Prize Picks, right? You want to take players from the same team, both to go over, both to go under together. So let me remove this. So here we have a pretty big gap, right? 2 versus 3. Literally 50% increase on Prize Picks compared to Underdog Fantasy. Like imagine an NBA players line 20 points versus 30 points. And I know I keep bringing it up, but like these are big discrepancies, big middle betting opportunities. So just pick one of these players. You could include either Bruce or Lakai. I'll include Lakai. And then what we can do is just try to, quickly create a slip before the lines move. All their names have to be so complicated in esports. So let's go here. And then we have our second pick. Perfect. So here, another under versus an over. So then we have 2 picks. Big line discrepancies, 4.5 versus 5.5. Then we have this Fook player again, but we want to look on Prize Picks. So then we have this Richard player, this Wade player. We already talked about them. Then we have Betty. Tons of different names. You go from Batty G to Betty in esports. So what we can do is we can go here, and then we want to take the over on Prize Picks. And then I just try to check like, nope. So what I'm actually going to do, this works out for us pretty well, is on Underdog Fantasy, I'm going to switch this Lakai player to Bruce. And the reason is now we have positive correlation, right? These players are on opposing teams. So this is an added benefit. On top of having a big middle, if Bruce goes under, then the person on the opposing team, Betty, is more likely to go over. So this under and this over are positively correlated, right? On Prize Picks, if you take over versus under, your payout doesn't change. But if Betty goes over, then Bruce is more likely to go under. So we have positive correlation here and on Underdog Fantasy, right? If Betty goes under, then Bruce is more likely to go over. So this is great. So we have 3 picks, and then we can keep on going. Richard, Way, Betty, Artemis. Addicted, we already hit. Kathy. So this is just a recommended play. Sandy Alcatrana over 1.5 walks. So it looks like they ended up moving that line. So I'm not going to be able to bet that. Poby under 5.5 on underdog. So none of these players are on the same team. So we can just go here, and then we can go here, and then we can go here, and then we can take his over 4.5. So now we have 4 picks on Prize Picks. 5 pick entries are what we're looking for. So this will be another 5 pick middle. And then we have Batty G. So we could end up middling Batty G, 2.5 point middle. So Batty G, take her over 28. And then on Prize Picks, we go to CSGO and we take her, Valorant, and we take her under 30.5. Pretty simple stuff. And I'm going to be able to bet 154 more on this because I already bet 150 on Batty G previously. So here's the 5 pick entry if you want to tail. Middle bet. 5 really good picks. Pretty big line discrepancies. So again, sometimes, when these lines first drop, you're going to see the biggest discrepancies, the biggest opportunities. Added benefit here is we have players from opposing teams, one guy to go over, one guy to go under. So we have positive correlation, which is always something you want to look for when you're betting on esports. So you can see it looks like Fliff already moved the line. Did they move the line? No, they didn't move the line yet. But regardless, let me lock in this play on Underdog Fantasy for another 150, and I'll do a 5 pick entry with insurance. So boom. That makes our second slip of the live stream. And then if you include Fliff, I guess that's the third bet. And what we can do is we can refresh this, see if there's anything good. So we basically hit everything. Would you play a 2-pick entry? So you still want to ideally find a 5-pick entry. It doesn't mean, necessarily you could play a 2-pick entry with a promo and be profitable, but it's still, optimal, to play 5-pick entries. So for example, like on Hot Streak, I've explained this before. I explained this in the last live stream, but sometimes when Hot Streak is running these hourly odds boosts, if there's no plus EV play to go with, and you have to take something that's like negative 0.19%, but your odds boost is 10% positive EV, it's like, who really cares? Because your slip is still going to be positive EV. If you combine a pick that's 10% profitable with negative 0.2%, your slip's still going to be like 10% positive EV, because you need something to pair with, right? So at the end of the day, you can play 2-pick entries on Prize Picks and make money on them for promos, but ideally you want to find 5 picks to go with, because in terms of the math, that will make you more money long term if you can just find 5 picks to go with. So you can see, like, again, in 8 minutes, Hot Streak, the sportsbook right here, they'll switch these 4 odds boosts. There will be 4 new players, 4 really good bets that they're increasing the odds on. This play on Dylan Moore, if you didn't already bet it, looks really good, right? Play Dylan Moore over. They're literally telling you we're giving you a lot better odds. They're boosting this play from around plus 100 to plus 139. So again, this is just in decimal odds. 2.39 plus 139. I'm not sure why their whole platform is in decimal odds. So you could pair this with, let's say, Cruz under half of a hit if you wanted to, plus 221 for Cruz under half of a hit. Or you could take Glasnow under 7.5 strikeouts, right? And this could be your 2-pick entry. So I would bet this, but you can see they only let you bet $10 per hour across all promoted projections. So they're literally telling you this play on Dylan Moore is good, but they only let you bet $10 per hour. My assumption is, this sports book, they want to keep you coming back to their platform every hour. So they give you an extremely profitable bet every single hour that you can only bet $10 on. Right now it's Dylan Moore, right? It's essentially an odds boost, a new odds boost every hour, boosted to plus 138. So in 7 minutes, they'll have a new promo. And again, these promos, like I've said this in other videos, but these promos are low-hanging fruit, right? If you want to make money sports betting, you don't have a big bankroll, but you're like, yo, I want to get started, I want to make some money. Like, the easiest money you're going to make sports betting is, these really good odds boosts, like Dylan Moore. They're literally telling you we're improving the odds by like 40% from plus 100 to 2.36, and now this play is profitable. It's only a $10 max bet size per hour, but, easy way to grow your bankroll. They also have a $200 deposit match. So I included, you can use my refer a friend code. It's just my name, Alex. I included them all in the description on YouTube. But you sign up, save up $200, you deposit $200 into Hot Streak. There's going to be $400 in your account. You're $200 richer. They're literally giving you a free $200 to sign up. And it's crazy. But again, all these sports books, offer these sign-up bonuses because they're all competing for new users, right? Underdog Fantasy, for all the square bettors, Underdog Fantasy, Parlay Play, Prize Picks, they all got to offer promos to lure in new people. And what you can do is, you could sign up for Hot Streak. You could literally only use this sports book with their promos to take their $200 deposit bonus. So when you deposit $200 in cash, you're going to have $200 in cash, $200 in site credit. So you have to bet through the 200 once, right? It's not just like you can put in $200 and then withdraw 400. You got to put in 200, and in your account, there's going to be 200 cash, 200 of free credits, right? And then you have to bet through the other 200. So you can just find these odds boosts, place a bunch of positive EV plays, look for their odds boosts, and you'll end up easily, over $200, even assuming you don't make any money. So easy way to grow your bankroll. Anyways, I'll call it a day for now. There's not a ton of plays right now, but hopefully this live stream was helpful. I'll put my email here too. So if anyone has questions about anything or I didn't get to anything, you can feel free to reach out. Appreciate the time.